Your microphone's on. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the meeting of the Town of Wareham Board of Selectmen Sewer Commissioners, October 27th. Can I have a roll call, please, Mr. Cruz?
Yes, Madam Chair. All 5 selectmen are present, and Mark Andrews, Town Administrator.
Thank you. We're going to skip over citizens' participation this evening. As you know, we all have to be at town meeting at 7. We're going to get right down to the business at hand. We have with us Mr. Andrews. Would you like to?
Madam Chair, through you to the board and the audience listening in our presence this evening, I'd like to ask Attorney Steve Torres to come forward to provide us with his report on the computer audit. It's being handed out. In the trunk.
Okay, I'll be explaining the content of the document that's in front of you, and you may maintain it as your own copy. It's an executive summary of the computer audit that was done in 2 phases by Global Digital Forensics, and then the analysis of the data that was provided in long form by them by our office. The background, as most of you know, the computer audit was requested to determine if the computer usage within the town hall and also in the police department was consistent with your existing internet policy, your email and internet regulations, which were in place at the time, and you all should have copies of that as well. Some very specific provisions that were in your computer. Now, at the time you scoped the work with Global Digital Forensics and the time you selected that company, I was not involved in that aspect of it. I had been special counsel for some other projects, but originally Copeland and Page was handling that. When it entered the grand jury stage, there were some concerns about some of the strategies that were being developed, evidently, and some of the protections for the grand jury phase of this. So our office was pulled in to handle the computer audit from that point on, and to also provide the 2 selectman, town manager, acting town administrator at the time, with legal counsel during the grand jury proceedings. So the disks were held up for some time with the grand juries, and then they were eventually turned back over to the town and to our office to complete the work. The deliverable that you had was a imaging of 67 computers, so hundreds of thousands of images, hundreds of thousands of lines of data, hundreds of thousands of website hits. And it was all in raw data form on a 4-gigabyte disk drive that was provided to our technicians to assemble the data in usable form for the town administrator in summary fashion for this board to look machine by machine and individual by individual to determine if there were violations of the internet policy. So that's a little bit of the background. I'll get into the methodology for our counts. The introduction of our report essentially is that background that I just gave you. The second section, cumulative violations and internet policies. If you look at your internet policy, it's very specific in what it says that you cannot do. It says that you cannot visit non-work related websites on your work time.
It says the employees cannot.
Yes.
Thank you.
Exactly. Now, specifically, it also prohibits you from downloading inappropriate materials, which is further defined in the report. And I'll let you read each of you read that. It also limits going to non-work related websites during working hours, and working hours also include, by definition in your policy, the break time and the lunch times. So any non-related work-related websites that we see in the website counts are out, unless somebody's working past 5 or staying past 5 just to use the computer here, are violations of your workplace policy. So what we did was we took all of the computers and we listed for you, and the town manager has the full report. That will not be provided to the board. You'll have the executive summary. He has the full report identifying by machine and individual the number of websites visited, the frequency of those websites visited, and what the website title was. We cross-referenced our office after the technicians identified them. Our office cross-referenced them to see which ones looked like they would obviously be non-work related. Some of them you can tell by the title, and some of you can't. We didn't put an exhaustive list in your executive summary because it would be as long as the double-sided binder we've given the town administrator. There are a number of non-work related sites that we were able to identify that individuals are visiting. That is the internet history portion of the audit. That was one of the two things you tasked Global to do, and for us to complete the analysis. Again, they provided raw spreadsheet data with all your internet hits. So we assembled it by machine and by user, the number of visits to certain websites. I've shortlisted some of the unusual ones that jump right out at you. Nobody needs to be on matchmaker.com during work hours or whatever that website is called. Victoria's Secret is in there. Red Cats, which is what used to be Chadwick's, shopping sites, gaming sites we've cross-checked. So there's obviously what you were looking for when you wisely called for the audit to determine if internet usage was in violation of policy. At least on the internet history side, it clearly was. There was clearly an excessive use of non-work related sites accessed by town computers. The second part of Global's tasking under your original scope of work with them was to ghost images and extract images and pictures on the computer to determine whether or not there was any inappropriate material on the computer. That generated hundreds of thousands of images. The actual number is in the data file that we have provided for the town administrator. Software was used to run scans on all of the images that were taken from the hard drives, and that software was used to pull out pictures that met certain levels of resolution, and I'm not a technician, but certain levels of resolution that would generally mean there is excess amount of skin color or skin material in the picture, or certain other parameters that usually are used by these high-tech scanning softwares to pull out indecent material. So of all of those that were removed by machine, they all had to be sorted by hand to determine which ones were questionable. They were sorted by hand by our technician. They were extracted by hand by our technician after the software scan and provided for the lawyers to look at and place into one of the categories. Now, how did we categorize data? We utilized essentially three categories that I think are important, and they direct the level of discipline and sometimes, as I call it, the level of understanding in these cases. The material that is illegal is the first category. Material that is illegal is child pornography. We did not identify any of the extracted sites or images that represented child pornography. However, we do have one picture that is troubling that unless we can trace it back to its source, we're not sure if the woman was underage or not, but she was not in a sexually compromising position. She was just a situation of partial nudity. Normally, if we could identify the age, I would call that one child pornography, but we can't identify the age. So only one of the slides appeared to be in that category, but we didn't have conclusive information. The next category was inappropriate material. What should not be on your computer? An inappropriate material is the material that would be frontal nudity, partial or nudity, frontal nudity, or provocative clothed situations. There could be situations where you're fully clothed and the picture is clearly inappropriate for the workplace. Those were categorized, and there were several dozen of those. And then there was what is called explicit, sexually explicit, or pornography, or indecent material. We categorize those